My name's Emily, and I grew up in Evanston, Illinois, a quiet lakefront suburb where things always looked perfect on the outside. But inside our house, perfection had a price, and apparently, I wasn't worth it. My older sister, Vanessa, was everything our mom ever wanted in a daughter. Poised, polished, popular. She could do no wrong, even when she did. I, on the other hand, was background noise. I wasn't rebellious or dramatic, I just didn't fit the mold. I liked art and books, not cotillion or debate team. I stayed out of the way and kept to myself. That's probably why they all assumed I didn't care, especially my mother. My dad used to say I had a quiet strength. He'd sneak into my room when I was drawing late at night and say, "You see the world differently, kid. Don't let them dim that light." But even he couldn't protect me from the way Mom favored Vanessa. By the time we were teenagers, Vanessa was getting custom dresses for homecoming while I wore off-the-rack sales from Target. She got a car at 16, I got a bus pass. And Mom's reasoning was always the same. Vanessa needs this. She has a future. As if I didn't. When Dad got sick, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, it all started unraveling. He fought as long as he could, but he was gone within 6 months. And with him, any sense of balance in our home died too. The day after the funeral, Vanessa took over like some queen stepping into her throne. She started referring to Dad's office as her study and moved his books into boxes like they were clutter. I remember standing in the hallway, watching her pack up his favorite biographies, with a coldness that chilled me. That night, I overheard Mom talking to her lawyer in the kitchen. Something about updating the will. My name wasn't mentioned once. It was like I'd ceased to exist. I tried to push the thought away. Surely Dad had set things up fairly, right? He loved me. He wouldn't just leave me with nothing. But I didn't ask questions. I didn't demand answers. That was never my role in the family. I was the quiet one, the one who didn't make waves. Until the day I found out the truth. A few weeks after the funeral, the house felt colder than ever, not just physically, but emotionally. Mom acted like she'd already moved on. She had her charity luncheons, her garden club, and Vanessa shadowing her like a perfect little clone. I mostly kept to myself, avoiding the awkward silences and icy glares. One afternoon, I was cleaning out the garage when I found a box labeled in my dad's handwriting, "Emily, private." My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were a few sketchbooks I'd forgotten I gave him, letters I wrote to him when I was little, and a sealed envelope with my name on it. My heart dropped. I opened the letter slowly, careful not to tear it. Dad's handwriting filled the page. "If you're reading this, Em, then I'm gone. And I'm sorry. I wanted more time, but you know life doesn't work like that. I've seen how your mother and sister treat you. It's not right. So I've made sure you're taken care of. I left instructions with Paul. Trust him. And never, ever think you weren't seen. I saw you. I always saw you." Paul was Dad's best friend. And his attorney. That night, while Vanessa was at some gala with Mom, I called Paul. I told him about the letter and asked straight up, "Did Dad really leave me something?" He hesitated for just a second before saying, "Emily, there's a lot you don't know. Can you come to my office tomorrow?" My chest tightened. So, he didn't just leave everything to Mom and Vanessa. All was quiet. Then, no. Not even close. When I got to his office the next morning, he greeted me with a warm smile and pulled out a thick folder. "Your dad rewrote his will a month before he passed. He didn't tell your mom or Vanessa. He wanted to protect you." I stared at him, barely able to speak. "He left you the lake house in Michigan, his retirement portfolio, and his share of the business he built with his brother." "That's substantial, Emily." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. "But your mother doesn't know this yet," he continued. "He put the assets in a trust, with you as the sole beneficiary. and gave me strict instructions to wait until after the probate meeting to reveal it. A mix of shock, gratitude, and guilt swirled inside me. For once, someone had chosen me. But it felt dangerous to even believe it. When I stepped out of Paul's office, I knew one thing. Whatever storm was coming, Vanessa and my mother weren't going to see it coming. And this time, I wasn't going to stay quiet. The day of the official will reading felt like a movie, one of those cold, sterile scenes where everyone's dressed in black and pretending to get along. We met at Paul's office downtown. Vanessa wore a sleek black suit like she was auditioning for some CEO role. And Mom, well, she had on her pearls and that forced smile she always used when she wanted to look like she was above it all. I sat across from them, wearing my dad's old flannel shirt under my coat. I could feel Vanessa's eyes roll the moment she saw me, like I didn't belong there, like this was her show. Paul began reading the standard legal jargon, and honestly, I tuned most of it out, until he said my name. To my daughter Emily, I leave the lakefront property in Saugatuck, my retirement accounts, and my 50% share of Callahan & Sons construction. These are placed in an irrevocable trust under her sole control. Vanessa blinked. My mom's face went white. What? Mom said, nearly laughing. That must be a mistake. Paul cleared his throat. It's not. There's no way. Emily never even showed interest in the business, Vanessa spat. Why would he give that to her? Paul stayed calm. Mr. Callahan stated clearly that Emily had the integrity and values to carry on what he built. I didn't say a word. I just sat there, holding my dad's letter in my coat pocket like a lifeline. Vanessa shot up from her seat. He was sick. He wasn't thinking straight. Mom reached for her purse. We'll contest it. Paul didn't flinch. You're welcome to try. But your husband had his mental faculties examined by a third-party specialist before signing the final documents. I have the notarized report. Any challenge would be fruitless. And expensive. I watched them flounder, and for the first time in my life I felt powerful. Not petty, not smug. Just seen. Still, that moment didn't last long. Vanessa turned to me, her voice low and bitter. You think this changes anything? You're still a nobody. You were always the weird one, the quiet one. You got lucky. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have words, but because I knew she wanted a reaction. And I'd learned long ago. Silence has its own kind of power. But inside I was shaking. Because part of me still wondered if I could actually handle what Dad left behind. Could I really run part of a construction business? Could I protect what he built from the vultures now circling? And most of all, was I ready to stop being invisible? After the will reading, I expected some time to breathe, to process, to grieve again in peace. But that wasn't in the cards. The very next morning, Vanessa showed up at my apartment unannounced. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, designer sunglasses still on like she was shielding herself from the truth. Let me guess, she said. You're just going to cash out and disappear. That's what you do, right? Run from anything that requires backbone? I stared at her for a second before responding. You really don't know me at all, do you? That hit her. For a second, her mask cracked. But she shook it off and stormed away, heels clacking like gunfire on the pavement. That day, I drove out to the lake house for the first time since I was a kid. The moment I stepped onto the porch, memories flooded me. Dad teaching me how to fish off the dock, summer nights making s'mores, that old creaky swing we used to sit on while he read aloud from the paper. The place was dusty, but it still smelled like home. Inside, I found a note in the kitchen drawer written in Dad's unmistakable scrawl. This place was always more yours than anyone else's. Don't sell it. Make it mean something. I sat down on the old plaid couch and cried. Not because I was overwhelmed by the money or the property or the power shift, but because for the first time someone believed I could build something, not just be pushed aside. But belief and reality were two different things. Running a construction business was nothing like sketching in a notebook or restoring a family cottage. The office was full of guys who barely remembered I existed. My uncle, Dad's brother Ray, tried to be supportive, but I could feel the doubt in his tone, even when he smiled. "Look, Emily," he said one afternoon, "your dad trusted you, and I respect that. But if you're serious about this, you need to get your hands dirty. This isn't charity work. It's contracts, permits, crews, deadlines." I nodded. "Then teach me. I'm not afraid of hard work." He blinked, surprised. "All right then. Be at the site at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Wear boots." And so began a part of my life I never expected. While Mom and Vanessa were busy gossiping with family friends about how I'd tricked my way into Dad's assets, I was waking up before dawn, showing up on construction sites, and learning how to read blueprints and negotiate material costs. I was tired, I was sore, I was overwhelmed. But I was also coming alive. The quiet girl they thought didn't care, she was finally finding her voice. And that voice was just getting started. 6 weeks into working at the company, I was finally starting to feel like I belonged. Or at least like I had a fighting chance. I wasn't just shadowing Uncle Ray anymore. I was making real decisions. I'd negotiated our lumber cost down with a new supplier, scheduled crews for 2 small projects, and even stepped in to fix a billing error before it caused a delay. But of course, that's exactly when Vanessa struck. I got a call one evening from Paul, my dad's attorney. His voice was tight. "Emily, I just received notice that your mother and sister filed for an emergency injunction. They're claiming your father was coerced into changing the will." My heart dropped. "What does that even mean?" "They're trying to freeze the trust until the matter's resolved. It's a scare tactic, but it's serious." I couldn't breathe for a second. I knew they were bitter, but this was war. That night, I sat alone in the lake house, rereading my father's letter. I whispered out loud, "Why didn't you tell them? Why didn't you prepare them for this?" But deep down, I knew. He was trying to protect me until he couldn't anymore. And now it was up to me to protect what he left behind. The next morning, I drove straight to my mother's house. Vanessa answered the door, smirking. "Emily," she said flatly, "come to beg?" "No," I said, stepping inside. "I came to ask why. Why would you go this far? Why are you so threatened by me having something that wasn't even yours?" Vanessa scoffed. "Threatened? Please. You got lucky. That's all. You don't deserve the business, the house, anything. You're not cut out for any of it. You were just the sad little side character Dad felt guilty about." That stung. But I didn't let it show. I turned to Mom, who was standing behind Vanessa like a shadow. "You taught me to believe I didn't matter," I said quietly. "And you know what? For a long time, I believed you. But Dad didn't. He saw me, and I'm not going to let either of you take that away from me." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "You'll crack, you always do." But this time, she was wrong. Because I'd found something stronger than approval or inheritance or revenge. I'd found my purpose. And I was going to fight for it. I had never stepped foot inside a courtroom before. I used to imagine them as dramatic places filled with shouting and finger-pointing like on TV. But the reality was more clinical, quiet, tense, and exhausting in a completely different way. My mother and Vanessa showed up looking like they were attending a garden party draped in black and fake grief. Their lawyer painted this picture of Dad as vulnerable, confused during his final weeks, and manipulated by me into rewriting the will. It was insulting, honestly. Their entire case hinged on the idea that I wasn't the kind of person Dad would trust with something so important. But then Paul stood up and presented everything. The psychological evaluations. The recorded sessions where Dad clearly outlined his intentions. The fact that he intentionally withheld the will from my mother and Vanessa for fear they'd challenge it. And then, the letter. My letter. The judge read it silently. For a moment, the room felt like it wasn't breathing. She was always overlooked, not because she lacked strength, but because she never demanded attention. Emily is the most thoughtful person I know. She's kind, she's fair, and she will protect what I've built. Not because it's hers by default, but because she'll earn it every single day. I didn't cry in that moment, but something in me softened. It was like he was there in the room with me. When the judge ruled in my favor, my knees nearly gave out. The trust was upheld, the assets remained mine, the business was mine, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I'd won something that mattered. Not because someone handed it to me, but because I had earned it, through every quiet, lonely year before this one. But even after the ruling, Vanessa wasn't finished. 2 days later, she showed up at the construction office, heels on gravel, fury in her eyes. "This isn't over," she said through clenched teeth. "You think owning this place makes you important? You're nothing without Dad." I stood up, not to argue, but to end it. "You're right," I said. "I'm not Dad, but I listened to him. I learned from him, and I earned his trust." She looked like she wanted to throw something, but instead she walked away. And this time, she didn't come back. Later that week, Uncle Ray invited me to walk a job site with him. We stood there in silence, watching the crew pour a foundation. "You've surprised a lot of people," he said quietly. "I've surprised myself," I admitted. Then he smiled. "Your dad would be proud. He already was." And just like that, the foundation under my feet felt real, not just concrete, but something stronger. I was no longer the girl in the background. I was the woman building the future. The court battle was over, but the emotional wreckage lingered. My relationship with my mother was non-existent now. She refused to speak to me even when we crossed paths at community events. Vanessa blocked me on everything. Honestly, I didn't mind. That silence used to hurt. Now it felt like freedom. Instead of clinging to a family that never really accepted me, I poured myself into the business and into the lake house. On weekends, I drove up to Michigan and worked on small repairs by hand. It was therapeutic, stripping old wallpaper, refinishing floors, repainting the kitchen cabinets in the soft green Dad always liked. I wasn't just restoring a house, I was rebuilding myself on my terms. Back at the office, the crew started warming up to me. At first, they called me boss with a smirk, like they expected me to be temporary. But now, they'd stop by my desk to ask for input. They taught me things, listened when I spoke, even joked with me. I'd earned their respect the only way that mattered, by showing up every day and doing the work. One morning, I found a sticky note on my desk. It said, "You're tougher than you look, thanks for having our backs." No signature. Just that. It meant more to me than any apology my mother never gave. And then, something I never expected happened. I was approached by a local nonprofit that partnered with women in trades, single moms, women leaving abusive relationships, women rebuilding their lives. They wanted me to speak at an event and possibly partner on a small training program using some of the company's resources. At first, I hesitated. I wasn't a speaker. I wasn't used to being seen like that. But something about it pulled at me. The quiet girl who used to draw in the back of class had something to say now. At the event, I told them my story. Not the legal battle, but the truth behind it. How it feels to grow up unseen. How healing starts when you stop asking for permission. How power doesn't always look like yelling or pushing. Sometimes it looks like showing up, again and again, until the world finally notices. Afterward, a woman came up to me, tears in her eyes. "I thought I was the only one," she said. That's when I realized I hadn't just inherited something from my father. I'd created something of my own. A year after the will reading, I stood on the porch of the lake house, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over the water. The house was fully restored now. It wasn't perfect, some windows still stuck and the stairs creaked a little, but it was mine, in every sense of the word. And more than that, it felt like him. My dad. His spirit lived in the details. The bookshelves he built himself. The old radio still tucked in the kitchen corner. The wind chimes on the porch that he always said reminded him life was moving even when we felt stuck. There were moments where I missed him so deeply it felt physical. But there was comfort too, because I knew now he saw me. He always had, and in trusting me with everything he left behind, he gave me a second chance not just to be part of the story, but to rewrite it. The business was thriving. Uncle Ray and I had expanded our team, hired 2 women from the nonprofit program, and started taking on restoration projects for affordable housing. We weren't just building homes. We were rebuilding lives. And then something happened I never could have imagined. Vanessa sent me a letter. No apology, no explanation, just a single page that read, "I didn't understand before. I still don't, but I see what you've done. I thought you didn't care. Maybe I was wrong." I didn't write back, not out of anger, but because I finally realized I didn't need her approval, or my mother's, or anyone else's. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I wasn't the quiet one in the shadow of someone louder, shinier, more loved. I was Emily Callahan. I owned my name, I owned my story, and yeah, I owned it all. But the most powerful thing? I finally owned myself. And that was the real inheritance.